Question 1. Stakeholder feedback indicates that a critical project is facing significant delays due to the perceived unsuitability of the current primary vendor. The project manager, under pressure to meet deadlines, has recommended a new, unvetted vendor who claims they can expedite delivery significantly. However, this vendor has not gone through the standard qualification and approval process mandated by China Railway Group's procurement regulations. What is the most appropriate course of action for the procurement department? Option A. Delay the decision indefinitely until a comprehensive, multi-year performance history of the new vendor can be obtained, even if it means further significant project delays. Option B. Immediately approve the new vendor based on the project manager's recommendation and the perceived urgency to prevent further project delays. Option C. Initiate a formal, expedited review of the new vendor's qualifications and capabilities against established procurement criteria and relevant national regulations, while simultaneously communicating the process and expected timeline to project stakeholders. Option D. Advise the project manager to split the required services into smaller contracts to bypass the standard procurement review process for larger contracts. The correct answer is C. Initiate a formal, expedited review of the new vendor's qualifications and capabilities against established procurement criteria and relevant national regulations, while simultaneously communicating the process and expected timeline to project stakeholders. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for project progress with the long-term implications of potential noncompliance with China Railway Group's internal procurement policies and relevant national regulations governing public infrastructure projects. The pressure to deliver quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise due diligence, potentially exposing the company to legal, financial, and reputational risks. Careful judgment is required to ensure that expediency does not override adherence to established procedures and ethical standards. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves initiating a formal review process to assess the vendor's qualifications against the established procurement criteria and relevant Chinese regulations. This upholds best professional practice by ensuring transparency, fairness, and accountability in the procurement process. It aligns with the principles of good governance and risk management, which are paramount in state-owned enterprises like China Railway Group. Adhering to these procedures minimizes the risk of selecting unqualified vendors, prevents potential corruption, and ensures that public funds are used efficiently and effectively, in line with national directives on infrastructure development and procurement. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately approving the vendor based on the project manager's recommendation and the perceived urgency. This bypasses the required due diligence and formal evaluation, violating China Railway Group's internal procurement policies and potentially national regulations that mandate competitive bidding or rigorous vetting for significant contracts. This failure to follow established procedures creates a significant risk of selecting an unsuitable vendor, leading to project delays, cost overruns, and potential legal challenges. It also opens the door to accusations of favoritism or corruption. Another incorrect approach is to delay the decision indefinitely while awaiting further, potentially unnecessary, information, thereby stalling the project. Due diligence is crucial. An indefinite delay without a clear justification or a defined timeline for resolution is also professionally unsound. It demonstrates poor project management and a lack of decisive action, which can be as detrimental as hasty decisions. This approach fails to address the stakeholder feedback effectively and can lead to missed project milestones, impacting overall organizational objectives and stakeholder satisfaction. A third incorrect approach is to seek a workaround that circumvents the standard procurement process, such as splitting the contract into smaller, non-reportable portions. This is a clear ethical and regulatory violation. Such actions are designed to avoid scrutiny and oversight, which is a hallmark of corrupt practices. It undermines the integrity of the procurement system, erodes trust, and exposes the company and individuals involved to severe penalties under Chinese anti-corruption laws and company regulations. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should follow a structured decision-making process. First, acknowledge and document the stakeholder feedback and the project manager's request. Second, consult China Railway Group's procurement policies and relevant national laws and regulations governing public works contracts. Third, Initiate the prescribed vendor evaluation process, ensuring all necessary documentation and due diligence steps are completed. Fourth, communicate transparently with stakeholders regarding the process and timeline. If the urgency is genuine, explore options for expedited review within the existing policy framework, rather than circumventing it. This systematic approach ensures compliance, mitigates risk, and maintains professional integrity. Question 2. Process analysis reveals that a new, unproven automated signaling system is being considered for a high-speed rail line expansion project by China Railway Group. While the vendor claims significant efficiency gains and cost reductions, internal engineers have raised concerns about the system's reliability in diverse weather conditions and its integration complexity with existing infrastructure. The project deadline is approaching, and there is pressure to make a decision on the signaling system procurement. Which of the following approaches best aligns with responsible project management and regulatory expectations for China Railway Group in this situation? Option A. Proceed with the full-scale procurement and implementation of the new system immediately, assuming the vendor's claims are accurate and addressing any unforeseen issues as they arise during operation to meet the project deadline. Option B. Prioritize the potential cost savings and efficiency benefits highlighted by the vendor and proceed with procurement, deferring a detailed risk assessment until after the system is partially installed to minimize initial project delays. Option C. Focus on the vendor's assurances regarding reliability and integration, and proceed with procurement without an independent technical review or pilot study, as the vendor is a reputable company. Option D. Initiate a comprehensive pilot study of the automated signaling system on a non-critical section of the network, to thoroughly evaluate its performance and reliability under various conditions before full-scale procurement and implementation. The correct answer is D. Initiate a comprehensive pilot study of the automated signaling system on a non-critical section of the network to thoroughly evaluate its performance and reliability under various conditions before full-scale procurement and implementation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing project timelines with the need for thorough due diligence, particularly when dealing with potential risks associated with a new technology. The pressure to meet deadlines is a common challenge in large-scale infrastructure projects like those undertaken by China Railway Group. However, rushing critical assessment phases can lead to unforeseen problems, cost overruns, and reputational damage, all of which are significant concerns within the operational and ethical framework of state-owned enterprises. The core tension lies between efficiency and risk mitigation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a phased and iterative risk assessment process. This aligns with best practices in project management and corporate governance, which mandate a systematic identification, evaluation, and mitigation of risks. For China Railway Group, this would be guided by internal risk management policies and potentially national guidelines on technology adoption and procurement. A phased approach allows for early identification of showstoppers or significant challenges, enabling informed decisions about whether to proceed, modify, or halt the project without incurring excessive sunk costs. This demonstrates a commitment to responsible innovation and adherence to established risk management protocols, ensuring that technological advancements are integrated safely and effectively. Incorrect approach is analysis. Proceeding with full-scale implementation without a comprehensive pilot study or robust risk assessment is a failure to adhere to prudent risk management principles. This could violate internal company policies requiring such assessments and potentially national regulations concerning the deployment of new technologies in critical infrastructure. It demonstrates a disregard for potential safety, operational, or financial risks, leading to potential noncompliance and significant liabilities. Focusing solely on the potential cost savings of the new technology while downplaying or ignoring identified technical uncertainties is an ethical lapse. It prioritizes short-term financial gains over long-term project viability and safety. This approach could be seen as a breach of fiduciary duty to the company and its stakeholders, as it involves making decisions based on incomplete or biased information, potentially leading to project failure or significant rework. Delaying the risk assessment until after the technology has been procured and partially integrated is a procedural and ethical failure. It signifies a lack of foresight and a reactive rather than proactive approach to risk management. This can lead to significant cost increases for remediation, potential project delays, and a failure to meet contractual obligations. It also suggests a disregard for established procurement and project management guidelines that require risk assessment to inform procurement decisions. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured decision-making process that prioritizes risk assessment and due diligence. This involves 1. Clearly defining the scope and objectives of the project, including the role of new technology. 2. Establishing a robust risk management framework, aligned with company policies and relevant national guidelines. 3. Implementing a phased approach to technology adoption, with clear go/no-go decision points based on risk assessment outcomes. 4. Ensuring that all stakeholders are informed and that decisions are based on comprehensive and objective data. 5. Maintaining transparency and accountability throughout the project lifecycle. Question 3. The assessment process reveals that a junior procurement officer is tasked with selecting a vendor for a critical component of an upcoming railway project. The officer has received a proposal from a vendor that appears competitive, but they are unsure if all internal procurement policies and relevant national regulations regarding public tenders have been fully adhered to in the initial stages of the vendor engagement. The project timeline is tight, and there is pressure to finalize the selection quickly. Which of the following approaches best demonstrates adherence to regulatory compliance and professional best practice in this situation? Option A. Proceed with the vendor if the proposal is financially attractive and the project deadline is met, assuming internal checks will be completed later. Option B. Accept the vendor based on a verbal recommendation from a senior manager who has worked with them before, prioritizing speed over formal verification. Option C. Expedite the internal approval process by submitting incomplete documentation, with a promise to provide the missing details post-selection to meet the project deadline. Option D. Seek immediate clarification from the procurement department and legal counsel regarding the specific internal policies and national regulations that must be followed, and ensure all documentation and approval steps are completed before finalizing the selection. The correct answer is A. Proceed with the vendor if the proposal is financially attractive and the project deadline is met, assuming internal checks will be completed later. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in large organizations like China Railway Group, where adherence to internal policies and external regulations is paramount. The challenge lies in balancing the urgency of a project with the imperative of regulatory compliance. A junior employee, eager to contribute, might overlook or misinterpret established procedures, potentially leading to significant compliance breaches. The need for careful judgment arises from the potential consequences of noncompliance, which can include project delays, financial penalties, reputational damage, and even legal repercussions. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding and application of China Railway Group's internal procurement policies and relevant national regulations governing public tenders and contracts. This includes verifying that all necessary documentation is complete, that the bidding process is transparent and fair, and that the selected vendor meets all stipulated criteria. Adhering to these established procedures ensures that the procurement is conducted legally, ethically, and in the best interest of the company and public funds. This aligns with the principles of good governance and responsible corporate behavior mandated by Chinese law and industry best practices. Incorrect approaches analysis. Proceeding with a vendor without completing all required documentation and obtaining necessary approvals is a direct violation of internal procurement policies. This bypasses crucial checks and balances designed to prevent fraud, corruption, and inefficient use of resources. It also fails to comply with national regulations that mandate transparency and fairness in public procurement processes, potentially exposing the company to legal challenges and sanctions. Accepting a vendor based solely on a recommendation from a senior colleague, without independent verification of their qualifications and compliance with bidding requirements, is also problematic. While collegial relationships are important, they cannot supersede regulatory and policy mandates. This approach risks overlooking a vendor who may not be the most suitable or compliant, and it can be perceived as favoritism, undermining the integrity of the procurement process. Rushing the approval process to meet an arbitrary deadline without ensuring all regulatory and policy requirements are met is a critical failure. Deadlines are important, but they do not excuse noncompliance. This haste can lead to overlooking critical details, making errors in documentation, or selecting a vendor that does not meet the necessary standards, all of which have serious compliance implications. Professional reasoning. Professionals in such situations must adopt a systematic approach. First, they should clearly identify the relevant internal policies and external regulations governing the specific procurement activity. Second, they must meticulously follow the prescribed steps, ensuring all documentation is accurate and complete, and all approvals are obtained through the designated channels. Third, if there is any ambiguity or uncertainty regarding the process or regulations, they should seek clarification from their superiors or the relevant compliance department. Finally, they must prioritize compliance and ethical conduct over expediency, understanding that short-term gains from bypassing procedures can lead to long-term, severe consequences. Question 4. Benchmark analysis indicates that a key supplier, currently bidding on a significant infrastructure project with China Railway Group, has offered a senior procurement manager a high-value, branded electronic device as a token of appreciation for their continued partnership. The procurement manager is aware that the bidding process is ongoing and that the supplier's proposal is under active evaluation. What is the most appropriate course of action for the procurement manager? Option A. Accept the gift, as it is a common practice in business relationships, and document it as a minor business courtesy. Option B. Politely decline the gift and inform the supplier that company policy prohibits accepting gifts during an active procurement process. Option C. Accept the gift and then discreetly inquire with colleagues about whether such gifts are generally permissible. Option D. Immediately return the gift to the supplier without any further communication or reporting. The correct answer is B. Politely decline the gift and inform the supplier that company policy prohibits accepting gifts during an active procurement process. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge involving the interpretation and application of China Railway Group's internal ethical guidelines and relevant national regulations concerning the acceptance of gifts and entertainment. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need to foster business relationships with the imperative to avoid any perception or reality of bribery or undue influence, which could jeopardize the integrity of procurement processes and the company's reputation. Navigating the nuances of what constitutes an appropriate business courtesy versus a prohibited gift requires careful judgment and a thorough understanding of the applicable rules. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes seeking clarification from the designated compliance department or supervisor. This aligns with the principles of good corporate governance and ethical conduct mandated by China Railway Group's internal policies and, by extension, national anti-corruption laws. Proactively consulting with the compliance function ensures that decisions are made in accordance with the most up-to-date interpretations of regulations and company policy, thereby mitigating risks of non-compliance. This demonstrates a commitment to ethical decision-making and a responsible approach to potential conflicts of interest. Incorrect approach is analysis. Accepting the gift without question and proceeding with the contract negotiation would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach disregards the potential for the gift to be perceived as a bribe or to create an actual conflict of interest, violating the spirit and letter of anti-corruption regulations and the company's code of conduct. It suggests a lack of due diligence and an implicit acceptance of potentially unethical practices. Attempting to discreetly return the gift without informing anyone is also professionally unacceptable. While seemingly an attempt to avoid impropriety, it fails to address the underlying issue of potential conflict of interest or the need for transparency. It also bypasses the established internal reporting mechanisms for such situations, which are designed to ensure consistent application of policies and to identify systemic risks. This approach lacks accountability and does not contribute to a culture of ethical awareness. Assuming the gift is a standard business courtesy and documenting it as such without further inquiry is a failure to exercise due diligence. The value and nature of the gift, coupled with the context of an ongoing procurement process, warrant a more rigorous assessment. This approach risks overlooking a violation of ethical standards or regulations, potentially leading to reputational damage and legal repercussions for both the individual and the company. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making process that prioritizes transparency, adherence to policy, and risk mitigation. This involves 1. Identifying the potential ethical or regulatory conflict. 2. Consulting relevant internal policies and external regulations. 3. Seeking guidance from the appropriate internal authority, e.g., Compliance Department, Legal Counsel, Supervisor. 4. Documenting the situation and the decision-making process. 5. Acting in accordance with the guidance received in company policy. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and uphold the highest ethical standards. Question 5. What factors determine the appropriate level of regulatory compliance oversight for new railway infrastructure projects undertaken by China Railway Group, considering the specific legal and operational framework of the People's Republic of China? Option A. The delegation of compliance tasks to external consultants without establishing clear lines of accountability and oversight from senior management. Option B. The adoption of international project management methodologies that have proven effective in other developed railway markets. Option C. The perceived urgency of project completion and the availability of internal resources for project management, irrespective of specific regulatory mandates. Option D. The extent to which project activities align with the latest national railway safety standards, environmental protection laws, and construction quality regulations issued by the relevant Chinese authorities. The correct answer is D. The extent to which project activities align with the latest national railway safety standards, environmental protection laws, and construction quality regulations issued by the relevant Chinese authorities. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in large organizations like China Railway Group, where adherence to regulatory compliance is paramount. The challenge lies in balancing the need for efficient project execution with the stringent requirements of regulatory frameworks governing infrastructure development and operations in China. Misinterpreting or overlooking specific regulatory nuances can lead to significant legal repercussions, financial penalties, and reputational damage. The professional must exercise meticulous judgment to ensure all actions align with the prevailing laws and guidelines. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a thorough understanding and application of China's specific railway industry regulations, including those related to safety, environmental protection, construction standards, and operational procedures. This involves proactive engagement with relevant government bodies, continuous monitoring of regulatory updates, and integrating compliance into every stage of project lifecycle, from planning and design to construction and maintenance. This represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the legal and ethical obligations mandated by the Chinese regulatory framework for railway enterprises. It ensures that operations are not only efficient but also lawful and responsible, safeguarding public interest and the company's integrity. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to rely solely on general international best practices without verifying their alignment with China's specific legal requirements. This is a failure because international standards, while valuable, may not encompass the unique legal and operational context of China's railway sector. Adopting them without due diligence could lead to non-compliance with mandatory Chinese regulations. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize project timelines and cost-effectiveness above all else, treating regulatory compliance as a secondary concern or an afterthought. This is a critical regulatory and ethical failure. It demonstrates a disregard for the law, potentially leading to unsafe practices, environmental damage, and legal penalties. Such an approach undermines the principle of lawful operation and corporate social responsibility. A third incorrect approach would be to delegate compliance responsibilities entirely to junior staff without adequate oversight or training. This is a failure in management and oversight. While delegation is necessary, ultimate accountability for compliance rests with senior management. Insufficient oversight can lead to errors, omissions, and a lack of understanding of complex regulations, ultimately jeopardizing the organization's compliance posture. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this context should adopt a proactive and integrated approach to regulatory compliance. This involves 1. Establishing a robust internal compliance framework that is regularly reviewed and updated to reflect changes in Chinese railway regulations. 2. Conducting thorough risk assessments to identify potential compliance gaps and developing mitigation strategies. 3. Providing continuous training and education to all relevant personnel on applicable laws and guidelines. 4. Fostering a culture of compliance where ethical conduct and adherence to regulations are valued and rewarded. 5. Maintaining open communication channels with regulatory authorities to ensure clarity and address any ambiguities. Question 6. When evaluating the potential risks associated with a new high-speed rail line construction project in China, which approach to risk assessment best aligns with the comprehensive oversight expected for major infrastructure development? Option A. Prioritizing only those risks with a very low probability of occurrence but extremely high potential impact, while giving less attention to more frequent, moderate impact risks. Option B. Relying solely on the subjective opinions and qualitative assessments of the project management team without incorporating any statistical data or quantitative analysis. Option C. Conducting a thorough risk assessment that integrates quantitative and qualitative methodologies, considering historical data, expert judgment, and scenario planning across technical, financial, operational, environmental, and regulatory domains. Option D. Focusing exclusively on historical data from previous railway projects to identify potential risks, assuming that past patterns will accurately predict future challenges. The correct answer is C. Conducting a thorough risk assessment that integrates quantitative and qualitative methodologies, considering historical data, expert judgment, and scenario planning across technical, financial, operational, environmental, and regulatory domains. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because China Railway Group, as a state-owned enterprise operating in a highly regulated sector, must navigate complex risk assessment frameworks. The challenge lies in balancing the need for robust risk identification and mitigation with the operational realities of large-scale infrastructure projects, which inherently involve significant uncertainties. A superficial or overly simplistic approach to risk assessment can lead to project delays, cost overruns, safety incidents, and reputational damage, all of which have severe implications within the Chinese regulatory environment. The pressure to deliver projects efficiently can sometimes lead to a temptation to downplay or overlook potential risks, making a systematic and thorough approach paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a multifaceted risk assessment that integrates quantitative and qualitative methodologies, drawing upon historical data, expert judgment, and scenario planning. This aligns with the principles of prudent risk management expected of major state-owned enterprises in China. It requires identifying risks across various categories, including technical, financial, operational, environmental, and political/regulatory. For each identified risk, a thorough analysis of its likelihood and potential impact is crucial. Subsequently, appropriate mitigation strategies, contingency plans, and monitoring mechanisms must be developed and implemented. This comprehensive approach ensures that potential threats are proactively addressed, aligning with the regulatory emphasis on project safety, financial stability, and sustainable development within China's infrastructure sector. Adherence to relevant national standards and guidelines for risk management in construction and infrastructure projects is implicitly required. Incorrect approaches analysis. Focusing solely on historical data without considering emerging risks or unique project-specific factors is an incomplete approach. It fails to account for novel challenges, technological advancements, or changes in the regulatory landscape that may not be reflected in past performance. It represents a failure to adapt risk assessment to the current context, potentially leading to unforeseen issues. Prioritizing only high-impact, low-probability risks while neglecting more frequent, moderate impact risks is also problematic. While catastrophic events require attention, a balanced assessment must also consider the cumulative effect of smaller, more common risks, which can significantly disrupt project timelines and budgets. This selective focus can create blind spots. Relying exclusively on qualitative assessment without any quantitative backing can lead to subjective biases and an inability to objectively prioritize risks. While expert judgment is valuable, it needs to be complemented by data-driven analysis to ensure objectivity and defensibility, especially when significant financial or safety implications are involved. This approach may not satisfy the rigor expected in regulatory oversight. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured and iterative risk assessment process. This begins with a clear definition of project objectives and scope. Next, a comprehensive risk identification phase should be undertaken, involving diverse stakeholders and drawing on various information sources. This should be followed by a detailed risk analysis, both qualitative and quantitative, to understand the nature, likelihood, and impact of each risk. Risk evaluation then involves prioritizing risks based on their significance. Finally, risk treatment, mitigation, transfer, acceptance, or avoidance, and ongoing monitoring and review are essential. This systematic process ensures that risk management is integrated into all stages of the project lifecycle, fostering proactive decision-making and compliance with regulatory expectations. Question 7. Governance review demonstrates that while China Railway Group is committed to accelerating infrastructure development, the initial project planning phase for new high-speed rail line has largely bypassed a detailed, multifaceted risk assessment process, with a focus instead on immediate construction feasibility and cost projections. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory expectations and professional best practices for managing such a critical infrastructure project? Option A. Focus exclusively on identifying and mitigating immediate safety hazards, assuming other potential risks will be manageable through standard operational procedures. Option B. Conduct a superficial risk assessment primarily focused on identifying cost-saving opportunities, with minimal consideration for operational or environmental impacts. Option C. Implement a comprehensive risk assessment framework that identifies, analyzes, and plans mitigation strategies for potential geological, environmental, safety, and financial risks before significant resource allocation. Option D. Prioritize rapid construction commencement by deferring detailed risk analysis to a later stage, addressing issues only as they arise during the execution phase. The correct answer is C. Implement a comprehensive risk assessment framework that identifies, analyzes, and plans mitigation strategies for potential geological, environmental, safety, and financial risks before significant resource allocation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between the need for rapid project initiation and the imperative of thorough risk assessment. China Railway Group, operating within a highly regulated environment, must balance the urgency of infrastructure development with the potential for significant financial, operational, and reputational damage if risks are not adequately identified and mitigated. The challenge lies in ensuring that the pressure to accelerate timelines does not lead to the circumvention or superficial execution of critical risk assessment procedures, which are foundational to responsible project management and compliance with relevant Chinese regulations governing large-scale infrastructure projects. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and comprehensive risk assessment process that is integrated into the project lifecycle from its inception. This aligns with the principles of good governance and risk management mandated by Chinese regulatory frameworks for state-owned enterprises and major construction projects. Specifically, it requires identifying potential risks, e.g., geological instability, supply chain disruptions, regulatory changes, environmental impacts, safety hazards, analyzing their likelihood and potential impact, and developing appropriate mitigation strategies. This proactive and structured approach ensures that potential issues are addressed before they escalate, safeguarding project success, financial stability, and the company's reputation, all while adhering to the spirit and letter of Chinese laws and guidelines related to project oversight and risk management. Incorrect approaches analysis. Focusing solely on immediate cost savings without a commensurate risk assessment is professionally unacceptable. This approach ignores the potential for unforeseen expenses arising from unmitigated risks, which could far outweigh any initial savings and violate principles of prudent financial management and regulatory compliance regarding project viability. Prioritizing speed of execution over the identification of potential safety hazards is a severe ethical and regulatory failure. Chinese regulations place a paramount emphasis on worker safety and public well-being in construction. Neglecting safety risk assessment can lead to accidents, fatalities, legal liabilities, and significant reputational damage, directly contravening national safety laws and corporate social responsibility expectations. Adopting a reactive approach, where risks are only addressed after they materialize, demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of effective risk management. This is not only inefficient and costly, but also exposes the company to significant operational disruptions and potential breaches of contractual obligations and regulatory requirements that mandate proactive risk mitigation. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this context should adopt a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves 1. Understanding the project's objectives and the regulatory environment. 2. Systematically identifying all potential risks across various categories: financial, operational, safety, environmental, legal, reputational. 3. Quantifying or qualifying the likelihood and impact of each identified risk. 4. Developing and prioritizing mitigation strategies, assigning ownership and setting timelines for implementation. 5. Establishing a monitoring and review process to track the effectiveness of mitigation measures and identify emerging risks throughout the project lifecycle. This structured approach ensures that decisions are informed by a clear understanding of potential challenges and are aligned with regulatory expectations and best practices for responsible project management. Question 8. Strategic planning requires a comprehensive understanding of potential challenges. When initiating a new, large-scale high-speed rail line construction project, which approach to risk assessment best aligns with the principles of responsible project management and regulatory compliance for China Railway Group. Option A. Expedite the initial planning phases by deferring detailed risk analysis until the project is well underway, prioritizing rapid approval and commencement of construction to meet ambitious timelines. Option B. Focus primarily on identifying and mitigating risks that have historically caused the most significant cost overruns in similar past projects, assuming these will be the most critical for the current undertaking. Option C. Emphasize risk assessment solely on immediate, easily quantifiable financial risks, as these are the most direct indicators of project viability and require the most urgent attention. Option D. Conduct a thorough, multidisciplinary risk assessment that integrates potential technical, environmental, financial, and operational risks into the earliest stages of strategic planning, developing proactive mitigation strategies for identified high-priority risks. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough, multidisciplinary risk assessment that integrates potential technical, environmental, financial, and operational risks into the earliest stages of strategic planning, developing proactive mitigation strategies for identified high-priority risks. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in large infrastructure projects like those undertaken by China Railway Group, balancing the need for rapid project advancement with the imperative of thorough risk assessment. The pressure to meet ambitious timelines can lead to a temptation to bypass or abbreviate crucial risk identification and mitigation steps. This is professionally challenging because a failure to adequately assess risks can have severe consequences, including financial losses, project delays, reputational damage, and most critically, safety incidents affecting workers and the public. The inherent complexity of railway construction, involving diverse geological conditions, environmental factors, and extensive supply chains, amplifies these risks. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a systematic and proactive identification and evaluation of potential risks throughout the project lifecycle. This aligns with the principles of sound project management and the regulatory expectations for state-owned enterprises in China, which mandate robust risk management frameworks to ensure project success and public safety. Specifically, it involves integrating risk assessment into every stage of strategic planning, from initial feasibility studies to detailed design and execution. This proactive stance allows for the development of appropriate mitigation strategies before risks materialize, thereby minimizing their potential impact. It reflects best professional practice by prioritizing due diligence, foresight, and a commitment to responsible project execution, which are fundamental to maintaining the integrity and sustainability of China Railway Group's operations and its adherence to national development and safety standards. Incorrect approaches analysis. Focusing solely on immediate cost savings without a comprehensive risk assessment is professionally unacceptable because it ignores potential future liabilities and unforeseen expenses that can far outweigh initial savings. This approach violates the ethical duty to manage resources prudently and can lead to project overruns, quality compromises, and safety breaches, contravening national regulations on project oversight and financial accountability. Prioritizing speed of execution over detailed risk analysis is also professionally unsound. While efficiency is important, it should not come at the expense of safety and quality. This can result in critical risks being overlooked, leading to accidents, structural failures, or environmental damage, which are direct violations of safety and environmental protection laws and regulations in China. Relying exclusively on historical data without considering project-specific nuances is a flawed strategy. While historical data provides valuable insights, each railway project has unique characteristics, geography, technology, local conditions. Ignoring these specific factors can lead to an incomplete risk profile and ineffective mitigation plans, potentially violating project management standards and regulatory requirements for site-specific risk evaluations. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this field should adopt a structured risk management process. This involves 1. Risk identification, brainstorming and documenting all potential risks across technical, financial, operational, environmental, and social domains. 2. Risk analysis, evaluating the likelihood and impact of identified risks. 3. Risk evaluation, prioritizing risks based on their potential severity. 4. Risk treatment, developing and implementing strategies to mitigate, transfer, avoid, or accept risks. 5. Risk monitoring and review, continuously tracking risks and the effectiveness of mitigation measures throughout the project lifecycle. This systematic approach, embedded within strategic planning, ensures that potential challenges are anticipated and managed proactively, aligning with both regulatory mandates and ethical responsibilities. Question 9. The audit findings indicate that the risk assessment for the new high-speed rail line construction project in a geologically complex region may have been insufficiently detailed, with a focus on readily identifiable risks rather than potential cascading or emergent threats. Which of the following approaches best addresses this finding in accordance with China Railway Group's commitment to robust risk management and national infrastructure development guidelines? Option A. Implement a reactive risk management strategy where risks are identified and addressed only as they materialize during the construction phase, focusing on immediate problem solving. Option B. Rely on the existing risk register, assuming that the initial assessment, while broad, captured the most probable scenarios and that further detailed analysis would unduly delay project commencement. Option C. Commission an external consultant to perform a completely new risk assessment from scratch, disregarding the previous work to ensure absolute impartiality and thoroughness. Option D. Conduct a follow-up workshop with key project engineers and geologists to specifically brainstorm and document potential cascading and emergent risks, their interdependencies, and develop tailored mitigation strategies, ensuring alignment with national safety and environmental standards. The correct answer is D. Conduct a follow-up workshop with key project engineers and geologists to specifically brainstorm and document potential cascading and emergent risks, their interdependencies, and develop tailored mitigation strategies, ensuring alignment with national safety and environmental standards. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a potential deficiency in the risk assessment process related to a new infrastructure project undertaken by China Railway Group. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the risk manager to balance the need for thorough risk identification and mitigation with project timelines and resource constraints. The pressure to proceed with the project might lead to overlooking critical risks or adopting superficial mitigation strategies. The correct approach involves a systematic and comprehensive risk assessment that aligns with China Railway Group's internal policies and relevant national regulations governing infrastructure development and risk management. This includes identifying all potential risks, e.g., geological, environmental, financial, operational, political, analyzing their likelihood and impact, and developing appropriate mitigation and contingency plans. This approach represents best professional practice because it ensures that potential threats are proactively addressed, safeguarding the project's success, the company's reputation, and compliance with national standards for safety and environmental protection. Adhering to established risk management frameworks, such as those potentially outlined in China's national standards for project management or specific railway industry guidelines, is paramount. An incorrect approach would be to solely rely on historical data without considering the unique characteristics of the new project. This fails to acknowledge that past experiences may not fully capture novel risks or changes in the operating environment. It also represents a failure to comply with the principle of due diligence in risk assessment, which requires a forward-looking and project-specific analysis. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize speed of execution over the depth of the risk assessment, leading to the omission of critical risk factors or the adoption of inadequate mitigation measures. This not only increases the likelihood of project failure, but also violates ethical obligations to manage company resources responsibly and potentially contravenes regulatory requirements for robust project planning and risk management. A third incorrect approach is to delegate the entire risk assessment process to junior staff without adequate oversight or expertise, which can result in a superficial analysis and a lack of accountability for identifying and managing significant risks, thereby undermining the integrity of the risk management function and potentially violating internal governance protocols. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with understanding the project's objectives and scope. This should be followed by a thorough review of relevant internal policies, national regulations, and industry best practices. The risk assessment should be a collaborative effort involving relevant stakeholders from different departments. The process should involve iterative review and validation of identified risks and mitigation strategies. Finally, the outcomes of the risk assessment should be clearly documented and communicated to senior management, along with recommendations for action. Question 10. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a new high-speed rail line project is facing significant pressure to commence construction ahead of schedule. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of robust risk management within the China Railway Group's operational framework? Option A. Implement a comprehensive risk assessment involving cross-functional teams to identify, analyze, and prioritize risks across all project phases, including technical, safety, environmental, and operational aspects, and develop proactive mitigation strategies. Option B. Conduct a rapid, high-level risk identification focusing primarily on immediate construction challenges and financial implications, with detailed analysis deferred to later stages. Option C. Focus exclusively on identifying and mitigating financial risks, as these are typically the most significant in large-scale infrastructure projects. Option D. Delegate the entire risk assessment process to the engineering department, assuming they possess all necessary expertise to identify and evaluate all potential project risks. The correct answer is B. Conduct a rapid, high-level risk identification focusing primarily on immediate construction challenges and financial implications, with detailed analysis deferred to later stages. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing the need for rapid project initiation with the imperative of thorough risk identification and mitigation, particularly within the context of China Railway Group's operational environment. The pressure to meet deadlines can lead to overlooking potential hazards, which, if unaddressed, could result in significant financial losses, project delays, safety incidents, and reputational damage. Effective risk assessment requires a systematic approach that considers both internal and external factors relevant to railway construction and operation in China. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a proactive and systematic identification of potential risks across all project phases, from planning to execution and maintenance. This aligns with the principles of sound project management and the regulatory framework governing infrastructure projects in China, which mandates comprehensive risk management to ensure safety, quality, and efficiency. By involving relevant stakeholders and utilizing diverse assessment methodologies, the process ensures that a wide spectrum of risks, including technical, environmental, financial, and operational, are considered. This comprehensive view allows for the development of targeted mitigation strategies, thereby safeguarding project objectives and adhering to national standards for railway development. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves prioritizing speed over thoroughness, leading to a superficial risk assessment that may miss critical vulnerabilities. This violates the ethical obligation to ensure project safety and compliance with China's stringent railway construction regulations, potentially leading to accidents or non-compliance penalties. Another incorrect approach is to focus solely on financial risks, neglecting other equally important categories such as safety, environmental, and operational risks. This narrow focus is insufficient for a complex undertaking like a railway project and contravenes the holistic risk management requirements stipulated by Chinese authorities, which demand consideration of all potential impact areas. A third incorrect approach is to delegate the entire risk assessment process to a single department without cross-functional input. This can result in a biased or incomplete assessment, as different departments possess unique insights into specific risks. This lack of collaboration is contrary to best practices in risk management and can lead to the oversight of risks that fall outside the primary expertise of the delegated department, potentially violating regulatory requirements for comprehensive risk evaluation. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured, multidisciplinary approach to risk assessment. This involves clearly defining the scope of the assessment, identifying potential risks through brainstorming, checklists, and expert judgment, analyzing the likelihood and impact of each risk, and developing appropriate mitigation and contingency plans. Continuous monitoring and review of identified risks throughout the project lifecycle are also crucial. This systematic process ensures that all relevant factors are considered, thereby promoting informed decision-making and adherence to regulatory requirements. Question 11. Compliance review shows that a critical signaling equipment component for a high-speed rail project is nearing its delivery deadline, and the current supplier is experiencing production delays. The project manager is under immense pressure to secure a replacement component quickly to avoid significant project delays and associated penalties. The project manager is aware of another reputable domestic supplier who can deliver the component within the required timeframe, but initiating a full, formal bidding process would likely exceed the project deadline. Which of the following actions best represents a compliant and professionally sound approach to address this situation? Option A. Inform the client of the delay and request an extension of the project deadline without exploring alternative suppliers or procurement methods. Option B. Consult with the China Railway Group's procurement department to explore emergency procurement procedures or expedited bidding options that comply with relevant national regulations for state-owned enterprises. Option C. Proceed with the purchase from the alternative supplier based on their reputation and the project manager's assessment of urgency, bypassing formal procurement channels to meet the deadline. Option D. Immediately engage the alternative reputable domestic supplier for a direct negotiation and expedited purchase, citing project urgency. The correct answer is D. Immediately engage the alternative reputable domestic supplier for a direct negotiation and expedited purchase, citing project urgency. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing the need for efficient project execution with the imperative of adhering to China Railway Group's internal procurement policies and relevant national regulations governing state-owned enterprise procurement. The pressure to meet tight construction deadlines can tempt project managers to bypass established procedures, potentially leading to non-compliance, increased costs, or even reputational damage. The core challenge lies in discerning when flexibility is permissible and when strict adherence to policy is non-negotiable, especially when dealing with critical components like specialized signaling equipment. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a thorough understanding and application of China Railway Group's procurement regulations and relevant national laws governing state-owned enterprises. This involves engaging the designated procurement department, conducting a comprehensive market survey to identify qualified suppliers, and ensuring all bidding processes are transparent and fair. This method upholds the principles of good governance, cost-effectiveness, and fair competition mandated by Chinese regulations for state-owned entities. It minimizes the risk of procurement fraud, ensures the acquisition of high-quality, compliant equipment, and protects the company from potential penalties or legal challenges. Adherence to these established procedures is a cornerstone of ethical and compliant operations for China Railway Group. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves directly negotiating with a known supplier without a formal bidding process. This violates the principles of fair competition and transparency enshrined in China's procurement laws for state-owned enterprises. It creates an environment ripe for potential collusion, price manipulation, and the selection of suppliers based on relationships rather than merit, leading to potential financial losses and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach is to expedite the procurement by bypassing the internal procurement department and directly approving the purchase based on the project manager's assessment of urgency. This circumvents established internal controls and regulatory oversight designed to ensure compliance and prevent malfeasance. It disregards the expertise of the procurement specialists and the legal framework governing such transactions, exposing the company to risks of non-compliance and potential sanctions. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on the supplier's reputation and past performance without conducting a formal due diligence process or competitive bidding. While reputation is a factor, it does not absolve the company of its regulatory obligations to ensure competitive pricing, quality assurance, and adherence to all procurement standards. This approach risks overlooking better offers or suppliers who may not have a long-standing relationship, but could provide superior value or more compliant solutions. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such situations should adopt a structured decision-making process. First, identify the specific regulatory framework and internal policies applicable to the procurement. Second, assess the urgency and its impact on project timelines, but always within the bounds of legal and ethical requirements. Third, consult with relevant departments such as procurement and legal to understand the procedural requirements and potential risks. Fourth, prioritize transparency, fairness, and compliance in all procurement activities, even under pressure. Finally, document all decisions and actions taken, ensuring a clear audit trail that demonstrates adherence to best practices and regulatory mandates. Question 12. When evaluating potential suppliers for a new infrastructure project and facing pressure from local community stakeholders to prioritize local businesses for immediate economic benefits, what is the most responsible approach for a China Railway Group procurement manager to adopt to ensure project success and uphold the company's commitment to international standards and sustainable development? Option A. Rely on informal assurances and personal recommendations from local officials regarding the reliability and quality of local suppliers, bypassing formal vetting procedures to expedite the procurement process. Option B. Focus exclusively on maximizing local content to demonstrate immediate economic support for the region, even if it means accepting potentially higher risks in terms of material quality and long-term supply chain stability. Option C. Conduct a thorough due diligence process on all potential suppliers, assessing their capacity, quality, ethical practices, and compliance with relevant national and international standards, regardless of their origin, to ensure the best overall value and risk mitigation for the project. Option D. Prioritize local suppliers offering the lowest immediate cost, assuming their quality and ethical standards are sufficient to satisfy local stakeholder demands and achieve short-term economic gains. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough due diligence process on all potential suppliers, assessing their capacity, quality, ethical practices, and compliance with relevant national and international standards, regardless of their origin, to ensure the best overall value and risk mitigation for the project. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing the immediate financial interests of a specific stakeholder group, local suppliers, against the broader, long-term strategic objectives of China Railway Group and its commitment to sustainable development and international standards. The pressure to prioritize local content can conflict with ensuring the highest quality, most cost-effective, and ethically sourced materials, potentially impacting project timelines, budget, and reputation. Correct approach analysis. Prioritizing a comprehensive due diligence process that includes assessing the capabilities, ethical practices, and compliance of potential suppliers, regardless of their origin, represents best professional practice. This aligns with China Railway Group's stated commitment to international standards and sustainable development, as outlined in its corporate social responsibility reports and procurement guidelines. Such an approach ensures that procurement decisions are based on objective criteria, mitigating risks related to quality, supply chain disruption, and reputational damage. It also fosters a competitive and transparent procurement environment, ultimately benefiting the project and the company. Incorrect approaches analysis. Focusing solely on the immediate cost savings of using local suppliers without verifying their quality and ethical standards would be a regulatory and ethical failure. This could lead to the use of substandard materials, project delays, increased rework costs, and potential breaches of international quality certifications or environmental regulations that China Railway Group adheres to. It also fails to uphold the principle of fair competition and could be seen as protectionism that undermines long-term supply chain resilience. Prioritizing suppliers based on personal relationships or informal assurances without formal vetting constitutes a significant ethical lapse and potential regulatory violation. This opens the door to corruption, conflicts of interest, and the selection of suppliers who may not meet necessary safety, environmental, or quality benchmarks. Such practices undermine the integrity of the procurement process and can lead to severe legal and reputational consequences. Ignoring the potential long-term implications of supply chain sustainability and focusing only on short-term local economic benefits is a failure to adhere to responsible business practices. While supporting local economies is a positive outcome, it should not come at the expense of project viability, international compliance, or the company's broader sustainability goals. This approach risks creating dependencies on unreliable suppliers and could hinder the adoption of more advanced or sustainable technologies in the future. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured, risk-based approach to procurement. This involves clearly defining project requirements, establishing objective evaluation criteria that encompass quality, cost, delivery, ethical conduct, and sustainability, and conducting thorough due diligence on all potential suppliers. When faced with competing stakeholder interests, the decision-making process should be guided by the company's overarching policies, ethical codes, and relevant national and international regulations, ensuring transparency and accountability throughout. Question 13. Strategic planning requires a comprehensive understanding of regulatory frameworks to ensure project viability. For a new high-speed railway line construction project in a sensitive ecological zone within China, what is the most appropriate approach to address potential environmental impacts and ensure compliance with national laws and regulations? Option A. Conduct a thorough environmental impact assessment (IA) in strict accordance with China's environmental protection law and relevant state council regulations on EIA, ensuring it is reviewed and approved by environmental protection authorities before project commencement. Option B. Delegate the responsibility for environmental compliance to the construction contractors without direct oversight from the project management team. Option C. Focus solely on the technical and economic feasibility of the railway line, assuming that environmental concerns can be managed through ad hoc measures later. Option D. Expedite construction by relying on preliminary internal assessments and addressing any environmental issues that arise during the construction phase as they occur. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough environmental impact assessment (IA) in strict accordance with China's environmental protection law and relevant state council regulations on EIA, ensuring it is reviewed and approved by environmental protection authorities before project commencement. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for project advancement with the long-term implications of environmental sustainability and regulatory compliance. China Railway Group, as a major state-owned enterprise, operates under stringent national environmental protection laws and policies. Failure to adequately assess and mitigate environmental impacts can lead to significant project delays, financial penalties, reputational damage, and potential legal repercussions. The pressure to meet project timelines is a common challenge in large infrastructure projects, but it must not override fundamental legal and ethical obligations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach, which involves conducting a thorough environmental impact assessment (IA) in accordance with China's environmental protection law and relevant state council regulations on EIA, represents best professional practice. This process is mandated by law and is designed to identify potential environmental risks, propose mitigation measures, and ensure that development projects are environmentally sustainable. Adhering to the EIA process demonstrates a commitment to legal compliance, responsible corporate citizenship, and the long-term viability of the project and the surrounding ecosystem. It ensures that all stakeholders' concerns are considered, and that decisions are based on scientific evidence and regulatory requirements. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to prioritize speed of construction over environmental due diligence. This directly violates Article 31 of China's Environmental Protection Law, which mandates that construction projects likely to cause pollution must undergo an EIA before approval. Bypassing or superficially conducting an EIA is a serious regulatory failure and an ethical breach, as it disregards the legal framework designed to protect the environment and public health. Another incorrect approach would be to rely solely on internal, non-specialized assessments, without engaging independent environmental experts, or submitting the EIA report for official review and approval by environmental protection authorities. This fails to meet the procedural requirements stipulated in the EIA regulations, which often require public consultation and approval from designated environmental agencies. Such an approach risks overlooking critical environmental issues and can lead to non-compliance, invalidating project approvals. A third incorrect approach would be to implement mitigation measures only after environmental problems become apparent during construction. This reactive strategy is contrary to the proactive nature of EIA, which aims to prevent or minimize environmental damage before it occurs. It also contravenes the principles of environmental management and can result in costly remediation efforts, project disruptions, and legal liabilities under environmental laws. Professional reasoning. Professionals in such situations should adopt a systematic decision-making process. First, they must identify all applicable national and local environmental laws, regulations, and policies relevant to the project's location and scope. Second, they should understand the mandatory procedural requirements, such as the necessity of an EIA and its approval process. Third, they must engage qualified environmental consultants to conduct the EIA rigorously. Fourth, they should ensure that the EIA findings and proposed mitigation measures are integrated into the project plan and budget. Finally, they must maintain open communication with regulatory authorities and stakeholders throughout the project lifecycle, ensuring ongoing compliance and adaptive management of environmental issues. Question 14. The monitoring system demonstrates a consistent upward trend in reported safety incident mitigation rates over the past quarter. Considering China Railway Group's emphasis on proactive risk management and adherence to national construction safety standards, which of the following best represents the most appropriate professional response to this observed trend? Option A. Focus solely on the quantitative data of the mitigation rates, assuming the trend indicates a direct and unqualified improvement in safety performance. Option B. Adjust the reporting thresholds for safety incident mitigation to align with the current positive trend, thereby showcasing continued progress. Option C. Immediately report the upward trend in safety incident mitigation rates as a significant success to senior management, highlighting the positive performance of the project. Option D. Conduct a detailed comparative analysis of current mitigation rates against historical data and established project benchmarks, while also seeking qualitative feedback from site personnel regarding the factors contributing to this improvement, to ascertain the genuine effectiveness of safety protocols. The correct answer is D. Conduct a detailed comparative analysis of current mitigation rates against historical data and established project benchmarks, while also seeking qualitative feedback from site personnel regarding the factors contributing to this improvement, to ascertain the genuine effectiveness of safety protocols. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires evaluating the effectiveness of a monitoring system designed to ensure compliance with China Railway Group's internal policies and relevant national regulations concerning project safety and quality. The challenge lies in discerning whether the observed data indicates a genuine improvement or a superficial adjustment, and how to respond appropriately without compromising the integrity of the monitoring process or the project's long-term viability. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between genuine operational improvements and mere compliance theater. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it involves a systematic, data-driven evaluation that seeks to understand the root causes of any observed changes. By comparing current performance against established benchmarks and historical data, and by considering both quantitative and qualitative factors, it allows for a comprehensive assessment of the monitoring system's effectiveness and the project's actual progress. This aligns with the principles of continuous improvement and robust risk management, which are fundamental to maintaining high standards in railway construction and operations, as mandated by China Railway Group's operational guidelines and national safety regulations. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the immediate positive trend without further investigation fails to address potential underlying issues. This could lead to a false sense of security, masking systemic weaknesses that might resurface later, potentially leading to safety incidents or quality defects. Such an approach neglects the responsibility to ensure sustained compliance and could be seen as a failure to uphold due diligence as expected under China Railway Group's internal oversight protocols. Another incorrect approach that involves immediately reporting the positive trend as a definitive success, without validating the data or understanding its context, is premature and potentially misleading. This bypasses the critical step of verification and analysis, risking the dissemination of inaccurate information to stakeholders. This constitutes a failure in professional reporting standards and could undermine trust in the monitoring system and the project management. A further incorrect approach that involves adjusting the monitoring parameters to better reflect the positive trend, rather than investigating the trend itself, represents a manipulation of data. This is a severe ethical and regulatory failure, as it distorts the true performance picture and undermines the purpose of the monitoring system. It directly contravenes the principles of transparency and accountability expected within China Railway Group and under national oversight bodies. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the objectives of the monitoring system and the specific metrics being tracked. 2. Collecting and analyzing all relevant data, both quantitative and qualitative. 3. Comparing current performance against established benchmarks, historical data, and regulatory requirements. 4. Investigating any significant deviations or trends to understand their root causes. 5. Formulating conclusions based on a comprehensive evaluation, not just superficial observations. 6. Reporting findings accurately and transparently, along with recommended actions. 7. Continuously reviewing and refining the monitoring system to ensure its ongoing effectiveness. Question 15. Process analysis reveals that China Railway Group's recent internal directive mandates the adoption of advanced safety monitoring systems across all major construction sites. Site managers are concerned about the significant upfront investment and the potential disruption to ongoing work schedules. What is the most professionally responsible and effective approach to implementing these new safety systems, considering both regulatory compliance and operational realities? Option A. Immediately mandate the installation of the new systems on all sites, prioritizing speed of deployment over any site-specific operational adjustments or extensive training. Option B. Defer the implementation of the new safety systems until the current project phase is completed, citing concerns about immediate cost and schedule impacts. Option C. Initiate a comprehensive pilot program in a selected high-risk site, involving extensive training for the site team, and gather feedback for a phased rollout across other locations, ensuring adequate budget and resource allocation. Option D. Implement the new systems with minimal training and resource allocation, assuming site teams can adapt quickly to the new technology and procedures. The correct answer is C. Initiate a comprehensive pilot program in a selected high-risk site, involving extensive training for the site team, and gather feedback for a phased rollout across other locations, ensuring adequate budget and resource allocation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in managing stakeholder expectations and resource allocation within a large-scale infrastructure project, specifically concerning the implementation of new safety protocols mandated by China Railway Group's internal guidelines. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate operational disruption and cost implications of these new protocols against their long-term benefits for worker safety and regulatory compliance. Project managers must navigate potential resistance from site teams accustomed to older methods and ensure adequate training and resources are provided without derailing project timelines or budgets. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased and collaborative implementation strategy. This begins with a thorough risk assessment to identify specific areas where the new protocols will have the most impact. Following this, clear communication channels with site teams are established to explain the rationale behind the changes, address concerns, and solicit feedback. Pilot testing the protocols in a controlled environment allows for refinement before full-scale deployment. Crucially, this approach includes dedicated training programs and the allocation of necessary resources, personnel, equipment, time, to support the transition. This aligns with China Railway Group's commitment to operational excellence and safety, as outlined in its internal directives, which emphasize proactive risk management and continuous improvement. It fosters buy-in from the workforce, ensuring smoother adoption and long-term adherence, thereby minimizing potential safety incidents and project delays. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediate, top-down enforcement of the new protocols without prior consultation or assessment. This fails to acknowledge the practical realities of site operations and can lead to significant resistance, work stoppages, and a superficial adoption of the protocols, undermining their intended safety benefits. Ethically, it disregards the well-being and input of the frontline workers. Another incorrect approach is to delay implementation indefinitely due to perceived cost or schedule impacts. This directly contravenes the spirit and likely the letter of China Railway Group safety mandates, which prioritize risk mitigation. Such a delay exposes the project and the company to increased safety risks, potential accidents, and regulatory scrutiny, representing a failure in due diligence and corporate responsibility. A third incorrect approach is to implement the protocols with minimal training and resource allocation, assuming site teams can adapt independently. This approach is negligent and likely to result in errors, accidents, and a failure to achieve the desired safety outcomes. It demonstrates a lack of understanding of effective change management and a disregard for the practical requirements of implementing new procedures, potentially violating internal guidelines that stipulate adequate support for new initiatives. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured change management framework. This involves understanding the mandate, assessing its impact, engaging stakeholders, planning the implementation meticulously, executing with adequate support, and monitoring for effectiveness. The decision-making process should prioritize safety and compliance, while also considering operational efficiency and stakeholder buy-in. This balanced approach ensures that new regulations are not just adopted, but effectively integrated into the project's culture and operations. Question 16. The audit findings indicate a potential deviation from standard procurement protocols on a critical high-speed rail project due to an urgent, unforeseen need for specialized signaling equipment. The project manager, under pressure to meet tight construction deadlines, is considering bypassing the usual competitive bidding process and directly engaging a known, reputable supplier based on a verbal recommendation from a senior executive. What is the most appropriate course of action for the project manager to ensure compliance with China Railway Group's hiring assessment test regulatory framework and relevant national laws governing state-owned enterprise procurement? Option A. Document the technical necessity for the specialized equipment, formally request approval for an expedited procurement process or a deviation from standard bidding procedures through the appropriate internal channels, and ensure the chosen supplier is vetted for compliance and value. Option B. Immediately halt the project until a full, standard competitive bidding process can be completed for the specialized equipment, regardless of the impact on the construction schedule. Option C. Engage the recommended supplier on a sole source basis without further documentation or internal approval, assuming the senior executive's recommendation implies compliance. Option D. Proceed with the procurement from the recommended supplier based on the senior executive's verbal assurance, prioritizing the project deadline over formal procedural adherence. The correct answer is A. Document the technical necessity for the specialized equipment, formally request approval for an expedited procurement process or a deviation from standard bidding procedures through the appropriate internal channels, and ensure the chosen supplier is vetted for compliance and value. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing the need for timely project execution with the imperative of adhering to China Railway Group's internal procurement policies and relevant national regulations governing state-owned enterprise procurement. The pressure to expedite a critical infrastructure project, coupled with the potential for unforeseen technical requirements, creates a temptation to bypass established procedures. The professional challenge lies in navigating this tension while upholding integrity, compliance, and the long-term interests of the organization and public funds. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a structured and compliant process for addressing the emergent need. This includes thoroughly documenting the technical necessity, seeking formal approval for deviations or expedited procedures through the established channels within China Railway Group's procurement framework, and ensuring that any approved modifications still align with the overarching principles of fairness, transparency, and value for money as mandated by Chinese regulations for state-owned enterprise procurement. This upholds the integrity of the procurement process, mitigates risks of corruption or inefficiency, and ensures accountability. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to proceed with the procurement based on informal assurances or a verbal agreement from a senior manager without documented justification or formal approval. This bypasses the established internal control mechanisms and national regulations, creating significant risks of noncompliance, potential for favoritism, and lack of transparency. It undermines the principles of fair competition and could lead to procurement of substandard or overpriced goods/services, violating the spirit and letter of regulations governing state-owned enterprise procurement. Another incorrect approach is to unilaterally decide to use a single-source supplier without a proper justification process. Chinese procurement regulations for state-owned enterprises typically require competitive bidding unless specific, justifiable exceptions are met and formally approved. Circumventing this process without due diligence and documented rationale opens the door to allegations of impropriety, conflicts of interest, and a failure to secure the best possible terms, thereby violating regulatory requirements for competitive procurement. A third incorrect approach is to delay the project significantly to conduct a full, standard bidding process for a minor, emergent requirement that has already been technically validated. While adherence to process is crucial, an overly rigid application that demonstrably harms project timelines and objectives without exploring permissible expedited routes can be professionally unsound. It may indicate a lack of understanding of risk management and the need for pragmatic, compliant solutions that balance efficiency with regulatory adherence. This could also be seen as a failure to proactively manage project risks and resources effectively. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should first clearly identify the nature of the emergent requirement and its impact on the project. They must then consult China Railway Group's internal procurement policies and relevant national laws governing state-owned enterprise procurement to understand the permissible procedures for addressing such situations, including any provisions for expedited procurement or single sourcing under specific circumstances. The next step is to gather all necessary technical documentation and justifications. Subsequently, they should engage with the relevant procurement and legal departments to seek guidance and initiate the appropriate approval process. This structured approach ensures that decisions are informed, compliant, and defensible, prioritizing both project success and organizational integrity. Question 17. Cost-benefit analysis shows that a new, unproven supplier can provide a critical structural component for a railway project at a significantly lower price than the approved vendor. However, this new supplier's materials have not undergone the full certification process required by China Railway Group's internal procurement guidelines, although they claim to meet basic national standards. What is the most professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Procure the components from the new supplier after obtaining a written assurance that their materials meet national standards and proceed with the project to meet the budget targets. Option B. Reject the new supplier's offer and continue with the approved vendor, ensuring full compliance with all internal and national standards, and explore other avenues for cost optimization within the approved framework. Option C. Accept the lower-priced components from the new supplier immediately to secure the cost savings, and initiate the certification process for their materials concurrently with project execution. Option D. Negotiate a partial payment upfront with the new supplier for the components, contingent on their successful and rapid completion of the full certification process before delivery. The correct answer is A. Procure the components from the new supplier after obtaining a written assurance that their materials meet national standards and proceed with the project to meet the budget targets. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing immediate cost savings against long-term operational integrity and compliance with China Railway Group's internal procurement policies and relevant national standards for construction materials. The pressure to reduce project expenses is common, but compromising on material quality or bypassing established approval processes can lead to significant risks, including structural failures, safety hazards, increased maintenance costs, and reputational damage. Careful judgment is required to ensure that cost-saving measures do not violate regulatory requirements or internal ethical guidelines. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes adherence to established procurement protocols and quality assurance measures. This involves conducting thorough due diligence on alternative suppliers, verifying that their materials meet all relevant Chinese national standards, e.g., GB standards for construction materials, and China Railway Group specific technical specifications, and obtaining necessary approvals through the designated channels. This upholds the principle of responsible procurement, ensuring project safety, durability, and compliance, which are paramount in the railway construction industry. It aligns with the ethical obligation to deliver projects that are safe and reliable, and with the regulatory framework that mandates the use of certified and compliant materials. An incorrect approach that involves accepting a lower-priced material without rigorous verification of its compliance with national standards and internal specifications is professionally unacceptable. This constitutes a failure to adhere to the regulatory framework governing construction materials in China, which mandates specific quality and safety requirements. Ethically, it breaches the duty of care owed to the public and future users of the railway infrastructure. Another incorrect approach, such as circumventing the formal approval process for material substitution, undermines internal controls and governance structures. This can lead to the introduction of substandard materials without proper oversight, increasing the risk of project failure and potential corruption. It also demonstrates a disregard for established procedures designed to mitigate risk and ensure accountability. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of project requirements and constraints, including budget. When cost-saving opportunities arise, the next step is to evaluate them against established standards and policies. This involves a systematic process of identifying potential alternatives, assessing their technical compliance, verifying supplier credentials, and understanding the full lifecycle cost implications, not just the initial purchase price. Any proposed deviation from standard practice or approved materials must undergo a formal review and approval process, involving relevant technical, quality assurance, and procurement departments. This structured approach ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with both regulatory obligations and organizational integrity. Question 18. Process analysis reveals that during the excavation phase of a major high-speed rail line construction project in a sensitive ecological zone, a team discovered evidence of a previously undocumented habitat for an endangered species. The project schedule is extremely tight, with significant penalties for delays. The project manager is under pressure to maintain progress. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action to ensure compliance with China's environmental protection framework? Option A. Proceed with excavation and report the discovery to environmental authorities only after the work in that section is completed. Option B. Discreetly adjust the construction plans to bypass the habitat without informing environmental authorities. Option C. Immediately halt excavation in the vicinity of the discovery and formally notify the relevant Environmental Protection Bureau to seek guidance and develop a mitigation plan. Option D. Continue excavation in the affected area, while initiating a low-priority internal review of potential environmental impacts. The correct answer is C. Immediately halt excavation in the vicinity of the discovery and formally notify the relevant Environmental Protection Bureau to seek guidance and develop a mitigation plan. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in large-scale infrastructure projects like those undertaken by China Railway Group. The challenge lies in balancing the need for rapid project advancement with the imperative to adhere to stringent environmental protection regulations. Specifically, the discovery of an endangered species habitat during the excavation phase creates a direct conflict between project timelines and legal obligations. Failure to address this conflict appropriately can lead to significant legal penalties, project delays, reputational damage, and harm to the environment. Professional judgment is required to navigate this situation by seeking solutions that are both compliant and practical. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes immediate compliance with environmental laws and regulations. This involves halting the immediate excavation in the affected area and initiating a formal consultation process with the relevant environmental protection authorities. This aligns with the principles of environmental stewardship and legal adherence mandated by Chinese environmental protection laws. By engaging with authorities, the project team can collaboratively develop a mitigation plan, which might include rerouting the construction, establishing buffer zones, or implementing relocation strategies for the species, all while ensuring the project's long-term viability and legal standing. This proactive and compliant approach demonstrates best professional practice by upholding the rule of law and responsible corporate citizenship. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves continuing excavation while simultaneously initiating a low-priority internal review. This is a regulatory failure because it disregards the immediate legal obligation to cease activities that could harm an endangered species habitat. It suggests a prioritization of project timelines over environmental protection laws, which is a direct violation of the Environmental Protection Law of the People's Republic of China. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of commitment to environmental responsibility. Another incorrect approach is to proceed with excavation and then report the discovery to authorities only after the fact, hoping for ex post facto approval. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It constitutes a deliberate concealment of a violation and undermines the transparency required by environmental regulations. Such an action could lead to severe penalties, including fines and project suspension, and severely damage the company's credibility. A third incorrect approach is to attempt to subtly alter the project plans to avoid the habitat without informing the authorities. This is a deceptive practice and a regulatory failure. It bypasses the established legal framework for environmental impact assessment and mitigation. While seemingly a shortcut, it carries substantial risks if discovered, leading to legal repercussions and a loss of trust with regulatory bodies. It also fails to ensure that the chosen alternative is genuinely environmentally sound. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a dilemma should first and foremost understand their legal obligations under Chinese environmental law. The decision-making process should involve 1. Immediate assessment of the situation and its potential impact on the environment and project. 2. Prioritizing legal compliance by halting activities that pose an immediate threat. 3. Engaging with the relevant regulatory authorities promptly and transparently. 4. Collaborating with authorities to develop a legally compliant and environmentally sound mitigation strategy. 5. Documenting all communications and decisions thoroughly. This systematic approach ensures that both project objectives and legal/ethical responsibilities are met. Question 19. Quality control measures reveal a significant deviation from specified material standards in a critical component of an ongoing railway bridge project. The project manager, under immense pressure to meet a looming completion deadline, suggests overlooking the issue for now and addressing it with a less rigorous post-completion fix to avoid delays. What is the most appropriate course of action for the quality control engineer? Option A. Suggest to the project manager that the quality control report be amended to reflect compliance, as the deviation is likely within acceptable tolerances in practice. Option B. Document the deviation thoroughly, refuse to approve the component, and formally escalate the issue through the company's established quality assurance and project management channels, advocating for immediate rectification before proceeding. Option C. Agree with the project manager to proceed with the component and plan for a superficial post-completion repair to maintain the schedule, as the deviation is minor. Option D. Discreetly inform the project manager of the potential risks, but proceed with the component's installation as instructed to avoid conflict and potential repercussions. Correct answer is B. Document the deviation thoroughly, refuse to approve the component, and formally escalate the issue through the company's established quality assurance and project management channels, advocating for immediate rectification before proceeding. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between maintaining project timelines and ensuring the integrity of quality control processes. The pressure to meet deadlines, a common occurrence in large-scale infrastructure projects like those undertaken by China Railway Group, can tempt individuals to overlook or downplay quality issues. However, the regulatory framework governing construction and engineering in China, as well as the ethical codes of professional conduct for engineers and project managers, strictly mandate adherence to quality standards. Compromising on quality control, even under time pressure, can lead to significant safety risks, long-term structural integrity problems, reputational damage, and severe legal and financial repercussions for the company and individuals involved. The correct approach involves prioritizing the integrity of the quality control findings and escalating the issue through the appropriate channels. This demonstrates a commitment to professional ethics, adherence to China's construction quality laws and regulations, and a responsible approach to risk management. It upholds the principle that safety and quality are paramount, even if it means temporary delays. This approach aligns with the China Railway Group's own internal policies on quality assurance and its commitment to delivering safe and reliable infrastructure. An incorrect approach would be to ignore or minimize the reported quality defects. This directly violates China's construction quality management regulations, which require thorough inspection and rectification of any non-conforming work. Such an action would also breach professional ethical obligations to act with integrity and competence, potentially leading to severe disciplinary action, including professional license revocation and criminal charges in cases of negligence resulting in harm. Another incorrect approach would be to attempt to conceal the defects or falsify inspection reports. This constitutes fraud and a serious breach of trust, violating both legal statutes related to construction fraud and the fundamental ethical principles of honesty and transparency. It would expose the company and individuals to severe legal penalties and irreparable damage to their reputation. A third incorrect approach might be to pressure the quality control team to alter their findings to fit the schedule. This is unethical and illegal, as it undermines the independence and objectivity of the quality control process, which is designed to safeguard public safety and project integrity. It contravenes regulations that ensure the impartiality of inspection bodies. Professionals facing such situation should follow a structured decision-making process. First, clearly understand the reported quality issue and its potential implications. Second, consult relevant company policies and national regulations regarding quality control and project management. Third, communicate the findings and concerns transparently and formally to the relevant project management and quality assurance departments. Fourth, advocate for the necessary corrective actions, even if it impacts the schedule, and document all communications and decisions. If internal escalation proves ineffective, consider reporting through established whistleblowing channels, ensuring adherence to legal protections for whistleblowers. Question 20. Assessment of a project manager's response to discovering a significant structural defect in a newly constructed section of a high-speed rail line, just weeks before its scheduled operational launch. The defect, if left unaddressed, could compromise long-term track stability under high-speed conditions, but its immediate impact is not overtly catastrophic. The project is significantly over budget and behind schedule, and reporting the defect would almost certainly lead to substantial delays and further cost overruns, potentially jeopardizing the manager's career. The manager is aware of the internal quality control protocols and national railway safety regulations. Option A. Immediately report the defect to the relevant quality assurance department and senior management, initiating a formal assessment and remediation plan, even if it causes project delays. Option B. Downplay the severity of the defect in the internal report, suggesting it is a minor cosmetic issue that can be addressed during routine maintenance cycles. Option C. Inform the construction team to discreetly attempt a temporary fix that will last until the initial operational period, with a plan to address it more thoroughly after the launch. Option D. Delay reporting the defect until after the operational launch, citing the critical timeline and the need to avoid public scrutiny of potential issues. The correct answer is A. Immediately report the defect to the relevant quality assurance department and senior management, initiating a formal assessment and remediation plan, even if it causes project delays. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the potential conflict between achieving project deadlines and upholding ethical standards regarding the disclosure of critical information. The pressure to complete a major infrastructure project on time, especially one as significant as a high-speed rail line, can create an environment where expediency might be prioritized over thoroughness and transparency. The dilemma lies in deciding whether to report a discovered defect that could impact long-term safety and operational efficiency, knowing that such a report might cause significant delays and financial repercussions. Careful judgment is required to balance the immediate demands of the project with the long-term responsibilities to public safety and the integrity of the railway network. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes safety and long-term integrity over short-term project completion. Reporting the defect, even with potential negative consequences, aligns with the ethical obligations of engineers and project managers to ensure the safety and reliability of public infrastructure. This proactive disclosure allows for proper assessment, remediation, and documentation, preventing potentially catastrophic failures and maintaining public trust. Adhering to internal reporting protocols and relevant China Railway Group guidelines on quality control and safety management demonstrates a commitment to professional integrity and regulatory compliance. An incorrect approach that involves downplaying or concealing the defect is professionally unacceptable. This failure constitutes a breach of ethical duty and potentially violates internal quality assurance regulations and national safety standards for railway construction. Such an action prioritizes personal or project-specific expediency over public safety, leading to severe ethical and legal ramifications. It undermines the credibility of the project and the organization, and could result in significant harm to passengers and damage to the railway's reputation. Another incorrect approach, that of delaying the report until a more convenient time without proper justification or interim safety measures, also represents a regulatory and ethical failure. While not outright concealment, it demonstrates a lack of urgency in addressing a safety-critical issue. This can be interpreted as negligence and a disregard for the potential immediate risks associated with the defect. It fails to meet the professional standard of prompt and transparent communication regarding safety concerns. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the ethical framework and regulatory requirements governing railway construction and safety in China. Professionals should first identify the nature and potential impact of the discovered issue. They must then consult internal policies and relevant national standards to determine the appropriate reporting procedures. If there is any doubt about the severity or implications, seeking advice from senior management or a dedicated quality assurance department is crucial. The decision should always err on the side of caution, prioritizing safety and transparency, even if it means facing short-term project challenges. Documenting all findings, communications, and decisions is also a critical part of this process.